Hi everyone, I'm Loish from Barda. I'm a digital artist, otherwise known as Loish on the internet, and I will be teaching you guys how I approach creating a digitally painted bust portrait. And a bust portrait is a portrait of a character from the shoulders up. And the first lesson is just going to focus on setting up your workflow, which basically just means how do you start, what software do you use, and how are you going to set everything up so that you can begin. I'm using Windows 7 and Photoshop CS5, but my choice of tools is pretty basic, so I think that different operating systems and versions of Photoshop will generally yield similar results. And I'm going to show you guys my layout for working. I have my tool panel on the left side, and on the right side my navigator, my history panel, and my layers panel. You can choose a variety of different layouts in Photoshop, but I like to use this one because I think it's very simple, and because I really enjoy having the navigator in the top right corner. It helps me to navigate my image. Obviously, the whole point of it is that you can, when you're zoomed in your image, you can sort of use the navigator to move to different parts. But the navigator also gives you a thumbnail view of your drawing. So when you're sort of zoomed in and painting little details, you can use the navigator to have a general overview, and you can see where your drawing is heading. I also use a Cintiq 24 HD, which is a very expensive, very large and heavy screen that I can draw directly onto, but any tablet will do. I spent most of my digital painting career, if that's what you can call it, using very cheap and small varieties of Wacom tablets because they are so easy to carry around. So anything will do, basically. Alright, so once you've got your layout ready and all of your basic settings, the first step is always to open a new file. So what you do is you go to File and you select New. And then you get a panel that has a variety of important options that you really need to know. You need to know what you're going for. I always start with choosing a preset for international paper. I'm in Europe, so A4, A3, these formats are very common, but if you're living in a different region, you can choose something that corresponds with your region. And the thing with this preset is that it chooses a size that is appropriate for printing on A4 or on A3. And it automatically chooses the right DPI, or pixels per inch. As you can see here, you've got resolution 300 pixels per inch. And 300 is the general standard for a high quality print. For some people, printing is not something they think about when they're making digital art, but as an artist who started out drawing very small images at a very low resolution, I could recommend to everybody to just draw at a high resolution. You never know what you're going to do with your work. You never know if somewhere down the line you want to sell a print of the work or give a print to somebody as a gift, or you want to include the drawing in an art book. Because if you want to do that, you need a high quality version at 300 dots per inch. So that's why I always start out with the A4 preset. The thing is, the canvas will look gigantic on your screen, but when you print it out, it'll be actually a lot smaller than you expect, but the quality will be sufficient for printing. My general philosophy is the larger the canvas, the better. So try to get your canvas as big as you can without it slowing down your computer or causing a lag while you're working. Now, once you've got your canvas, you can do a variety of things to change the setup. I think a portrait format like this is ideal, but you can rotate the image 90 degrees counterclockwise and create a landscape format. One thing you really need to keep in mind when you're working is don't upscale your artwork down the road. And by that I mean once you've already started drawing some lines, getting your work down on the canvas, you don't want to upscale it, so make it larger as you're going along, because that will reduce the quality of the artwork that you've made. And I'm going to demonstrate this right now by making a very small canvas, 500 by 500 pixels. This is really very small, because to demonstrate, if you compare this to the setting that I already had open, we're looking at 2,480 pixels wide at 300 pixels per inch, which is quite large. So if I'm going to make a small canvas, I'll choose 500 by 500 at 72 pixels per inch, which is very low quality. And say I take this and I just start using this as the canvas for my artwork. I'm just going to draw a very quick happy stick figure, purely for demonstration purposes. Now let's say I realize this canvas is really small and I need to upscale it in order to work at the level of detail that I want. Upscaling is something you can do with the image size option, which is a panel will open and it'll give you the option to change the size of the width or the height of your canvas, and it'll stretch your artwork with it. So let's say I change the width to double the size to 1,000 pixels. See, the image becomes stretched in width. You can also constrain the proportions, which means that the height and the width will stretch equally in proportion. So let's say I do that, and then I set the width to 1,000, the height will also change automatically. And of course this looks less dramatically stretched to the untrained eye, but if you zoom in and you take a good look at the quality of the brush strokes, it's been stretched and blurred basically. And if I draw some new brush strokes next to it, you'll see that they're way sharper and the quality is much higher of these brush strokes. Whereas the stretched ones are just blurred and they don't look very good at all. So this is just to demonstrate, but this is not what you want to do when you're actually drawing your picture. Don't upscale later in the process. Just start big, and if you have to, downscale, but try to avoid it. There are other resizing options as well. You can use the canvas size option, which will change your canvas size but not the drawing itself. So you see that the canvas has become larger, but it didn't stretch the stick figure with it. And also when you're stretching, when you're using canvas size, you need to think about how it will change the background color, or as they call it in this panel, the canvas extension color. You can set it to background. If you accidentally have it set to background and your background is like a totally different color than the rest of your canvas, then it will create like a thick border. So you want to make sure that if you need more white space around this stick figure, that you have the background color set to white. And another really useful and quick and intuitive tool for resizing your canvas is the crop tool. The crop tool, most people use it to make your canvas smaller, but you can also use it to make your canvas bigger by just expanding the sort of square beyond your canvas, and it will automatically take your background color as the extension color of the canvas. So be sure to have that set to the correct color before you use the crop tool to make your canvas larger. Alright, so once you've got your canvas all set up and at the correct size and everything, you need to choose a brush. I have a bunch of different brushes. Photoshop comes with a variety of different brushes that are very useful and interesting, and you can also download them from the internet. I follow a lot of artists on DeviantArt and on Tumblr who upload their brush sets from time to time, and then I just install it and try them out at some point. So this is a chalky brush that comes with Photoshop that I really love using for sketching and putting in blocks of color. And for painting, I like to lower the opacity and then just layer over the original brush strokes, and then you get like a gradually intensifying color. And you can also play around with the flow to make it look like sort of like a crayon. And this one just comes with Photoshop. And this is a different brush that I like to use that I downloaded from the web, which looks a bit like, you know, it creates sort of like pencil lines, and I like to use it in the same way as the previous brush, using a lower opacity for painting purposes. And this is a more sort of like flowy paintbrush type of thing that I have. It works better at a smaller size, because when it's set to a large size it lags quite a lot, so I use it for details and line work. Generally I like to just take one brush and stick with it throughout the process. I don't like to change the brushes very much as I work, because I feel it's a distraction. But some people really like to combine brushes, and it's good to try that out. And this is just a standard Photoshop brush set to maximum opacity, but to the lowest possible flow, and it just creates a sort of very soft effect. And this can be really useful when you've got a sort of rough sketch of your image and you want to smooth out some of the painting. So I will be using this brush, I think, to start out. There are a variety of different ways you can change your brush setting. You can mess around with the opacity and the flow like I just did, and you can also open the brush panel. And there are a variety of different options: shape, dynamic, scattering, texture, dual brush, etc., etc. I generally avoid these things. When I have a brush that seems to have potential but has some kind of thing that's irritating me, like some effect or texture in there that I think it could do without, and I like to sort of play around with these settings and see if I can get rid of it. But that's actually as far as I go in the way of messing around with these settings. I like to take the brush as it is most of the time. Okay, so now it's time to get started on the drawing. And my concept for the drawing is I want to make a futuristic steampunk kind of girl with a tough tomboyish vibe. And I want her to have dreadlocks and brightly colored clothes. And I have a color combination in mind already. I really want something with like sort of lemon yellow, maybe a bit of a greenish yellow, and like a bright turquoise with some brown accents. And this is just a color combination that I have in my head, and I'm thinking I really want to use this for drawing. So that's sort of my starting point. It's very personal what your starting point can be for drawing. For me, color combinations really do the trick. So that's my color scheme, and I want a certain kind of character, which is the tough, tomboyish, steampunkish kind of girl. And I'm just going to try and stick to these factors while drawing and sort of assess whether the image is working out based on those criteria. When coming up with ideas, my tip is find a balance between having a very specific goal in mind but also giving yourself some room to change things as you go along. So you want to make sure that you don't draw aimlessly, but you also want to make sure that you don't get stuck because you're so like determined to create a very specific kind of drawing. Like, you want to give yourself some room as well. And I'm just going to start with, you know, finding a brush that feels good for sketching. I'm going to set it to a lower opacity and make it a bit smaller in size so that it's thin. And then I just want to start sketching. Right now I'm just going to keep it really rough, and I'm going to make 3 different sketches so that I can sort of like see and sort of run through the ideas that I have in my mind and choose the one that seems to be working best for me. So I'm trying the same kind of composition for all of the illustrations, but just taking the character from a few different angles. Alright, so here are 3 sketches. I'm going to choose one for my final, and I think the first one worked out best. This one appeals to me the most, so I'm just going to take this one as my final sketch. I'm just going to select it, copy it, paste it on a new layer, and then I can just set it aside. I'm going to rename the layer. The other one's the one that the sketches is on is called Rough Sketches, and I'm going to call this one Final Rough Sketch. And what I can do now is, because we're still in a very early phase of the drawing, I can basically scale this one to take up the whole canvas. As I mentioned before, the quality of the line work will be really reduced, but because this is the extremely rough sketch, it's not a problem yet. I'm going to be drawing a higher quality sketch on top of it and working with that. So as you can see, the brush strokes are pretty reduced in quality, but it's no problem. Okay, so that's the end of the first lesson. I've basically set up the whole workflow for me to get started on this portrait. I'm just going to save this one, Steampunk Girl. And in the next lesson, I'll be showing you guys how to make the rough sketch and how to add some rough colors to the sketch.